When browsing Hindu art, mosaics, and paintings, you may sometimes see the depiction of a blue man riding in a chariot. He at times is wearing yellow robes and a crown. Sometimes he is dressed in armor, like a warrior, and sometimes he is playing a flute. You might see him sitting in a garden with his wife, Rukmini, or other consorts. Sometimes you might see this blue man depicted in his divine form with 4 arms and a halo of light around his body. This is Lord Krishna, a major deity in Hinduism, who shares some similar traits with Jesus Christ for their miraculous birth origin stories. If we were to place Krishna historically, he would have lived around 3200 BCE, so quite a bit of time before Christ. He is worshipped as the 8th avatar of Vishnu and also as the personality of the Supreme Godhead in his own right. He is one of the most popular and widely revered figures among Hindu divinities. The story of Krishna's life and teachings are memorialized in several books of Hindu literature. One of the most famous is the Mahabharata, an epic poem spanning 8 books and around 200,000 lines of poetic verse. On a battlefield, Lord Krishna takes the role of a spiritual advisor, philosopher, and charioteer to his friend and cousin, Prince Arjuna. He encourages Arjuna to have courage and fight on, and the philosophical conversation that follows covers many elements of Hindu spirituality, including the meaning of life, death, the 3 gunas, and the nature of the divine. The famous conversation and the Mahabharata later became the Bhagavad Gita, one of the most recognized and revered Hindu scriptures across the world. As you may know by now, this podcast seeks to explore the symbol of the Tree of Life as it appears in various spiritual traditions around the world. In sacred Hindu literature, the Tree of Life makes its appearance in the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna begins to speak of the Tree of Eternity, which is sometimes translated as the Cosmic Tree or the Tree of Life. The Tree of Eternity is also mentioned in the Katha Upanishad, which is a sacred poem and one of many Upanishads that has survived to modern day. The Bhagavad Gita is a core text of Hindu philosophy that summarizes the philosophies of the Upanishads, some of which are estimated to be around 3,000 years old. So, just giving you an idea of the age of the literature and spiritual concepts that we are discussing. I will read a brief excerpt from the Bhagavad Gita discussing the Tree of Eternity, and then dive into a Tree of Life spiritual commentary about the significance of Lord Krishna's inverted tree as it relates to the nature of creation in Hindu cosmology. The following translation of the Bhagavad Gita, the 15th teaching, is by Barbara Stoller Miller. Roots in the air, branches below. The tree of eternity is unchanging, they say. Its leaves the Vedic hymns, and he who knows it knows the Vedas. Its branches stretch below and above, nourished by nature's qualities, budding with sense objects, aerial roots tangled in actions reach downward into the world of men. Its form is unknown here in the world. Unknown are its end, its beginning, its extent. Cut down this tree that has such deep roots with the sharp axe of detachment. In the Gita, the tree of eternity is described as inverted or upside down, roots in the air and branches below. Krishna tells us the pure root is Brahman himself, which is God. So what does this mean? And how can we apply it to the world we perceive around us and our understanding of spiritual practice? Part 1. Imagining the inverted tree. First, imagine you are standing in a field full of yellow grass. It's around noon, and the hot sun is shining high above you. In the distance, across that flat golden field, you see a giant tree looming on the horizon. It grows up and up and up. It is absolutely massive. And as you walk towards the tree, you begin to realize that below your very feet, its roots are spanning through the ground. The tree is so massive, its upper branches seem to reach beyond the sky, through the atmosphere, into the very cosmos. Its roots are easily large enough to encapsulate the entire earth. And here you are, a tiny human being, gazing upon this tree of eternity filled with awe. As Krishna describes, its branches stretch below and above, nourished by nature's qualities, budding with sense objects, aerial roots tangled in actions reach downward into the world of men. And this is how the tree of eternity is perceived when looking through the physical body, where we are still shrouded by the illusion of the ego, and we dwell within the world of Maya, which is the world as we know it now. The roots are anchored in darkness in the earth, Maya, while the tree branches extend far above into an unknowable world of wind and light. The heavy roots of Maya, Part 2. We perceive ourselves as a body, separate, unique, and distinct. As long as we perceive ourselves as a body, we belong to the roots, to the heaviness of Maya and the darkness of the earth. Our awareness remains veiled within our bodies, the true heart of ourselves buried underground, kept in a dormant state of spiritual blindness. Because we are blind, we are also clumsy. We are always tangled up in the consequences of our actions, and we tell ourselves we are happy like this. Everything is how it should be, except it's not really how it should be, because something is missing. And we know this to be so. Something is missing because at the very heart of ourselves, we don't really know who we are. At the very root of ourselves is a lingering shadow. We don't really understand what life is. We don't really know how we got to be here. We don't really know what survives after death. And so we don't really understand the tree, even as we look upon it, for we dwell within this heavy realm of Maya and spiritual blindness. And this is how a human life is. We live in the heavy realm among the dark roots of creation. It is a shadow realm of impermanence, bound to the whims of karma, constrained by natural law, not knowing ourselves, not remembering our true nature. In the dark roots of Maya, existence is like a storm that is constantly moving and changing. All sorts of trials plague us day to day. Suffering after suffering arises in waves, and we chase after material comforts. Living beings are constantly giving birth and then dying. Our joy is fleeting, and so is our health. We are governed by desires, cravings, survival, individual hopes and destinies, and ultimately, a well-intentioned sort of selfishness. In the blink of an eye, decades pass. We contemplate our own mortality. Finally, we turn to that big tree on the horizon under whose shade we have been living this whole time, and we wonder, what is real? What is eternal? How can any of this world exist if it is emerging from nothing and then decaying into nothing? How can any of this be real or substantial if it perishes so quickly? What is the truth behind the shadow? Part 3. The illumination of the self. Its form is unknown here in the world. Unknown are its end, its beginning, its extent. Cut down this tree that has such deep roots with the sharp axe of detachment. Then the flame of inner awareness ignites. The shadow disperses from our eyes and our vision of the tree changes. As we detach from the physical body, learning to see life more objectively and impartially, we see that whereas the earth is always changing, it is not so for the tree of eternity. The tree's branches stretch far above the clouds, beyond the stormy weather and blowing winds of fate, into the pure light of the cosmos. Nothing can corrupt this light. Nothing can change it or affect it. It is eternal. It does not die. It is not born. It is all pervasive, expansive, true, and real. And then we realize perhaps we are looking at the tree all wrong. Maybe we are upside down. Maybe this pure primordial light is the true ground, indistinguishable, unalterable, absolute, eternal. Maybe the branches are actually the roots. Maybe the tree is growing from the light and not from the earth at all. Maybe the tree came from the light, and to the light it is always returning. And maybe this earth, the realm of Maya, is nothing but illusion. What looks like solid ground is actually as empty as air. And maybe we are not a body. Maybe we are something else, something far beyond this physical existence. Maybe we are the light as well. Maybe in truth, everything is this light, undifferentiated from itself. Which means as long as we exist within the ego, we exist upside down, inverted, in blindness, and in bondage. And indeed, everything we know and believe to be true about this human life in the body is upside down, inverted, and untrue. To come into the human body is to live in opposition of the truth. You can rely on this fact, for it is one of the secrets of the illusion of Maya. On earth, we see the worship of money, fame, and materialism, while in truth, we must only worship God, the heart of life itself. In the material world, it is natural to become angry when provoked. In truth, we must never harbor anger within us. In the material world, it is natural to lust after a mate, while in truth, we are beings of pure spirit, far beyond gender or any need to procreate. In the material world, we struggle with our grief and our mortality, our desires and our passions, while in truth, we must always remain detached and renounce these worldly fears and desires. And a spiritual life truly is a life of immense discipline. In the material world, knowledge is gained through arduous study, and we look to external things like fitness and nutrition to sustain our health. While in truth, pure knowledge or gnosis arises instantly from our purified consciousness, and the pure spirit gives life to the whole body. Through spiritual practice, we gain longevity. So this is why we must cut off the roots of the tree, slice through the illusion of Maya by detaching from the material world and its values. Then the whole tree rights itself. We must not gaze upon the world, but look within. We must slice through the material aspects of ourselves, seeing their inherent emptiness. We must cut through our suffering, our grievances, our hate, our desires, our little pettinesses, and grab hold of the pure root that resides within our heart of hearts. In order to clear our eyes of the veil, we must cut through these deep roots of illusion with the sharp axe of detachment. We must turn inward and seek within the heart. Here, the pure root of Brahman awaits. Then the tree will be seen right side up, or from the inside out. Because you see, the tree of eternity was never outside of you. It was always inside. And the world you perceived in darkness was only because of the darkness inside of you. And the truth in the world will only be perceived when you find that truth within. So the story of the inverted tree is this. When we look at the world through spiritual blindness, we cannot see the unity inherent within creation, not even if we look very hard. And yet, this unity exists. Before we can see it, the inverted tree must be righted, and we must correct our vision. We must see through the eyes of knowledge that reside within the heart. And this means discovering the true light of Brahman within. And we do this with the sharp axe of detachment, singing over and over again, not this, not this. When the tree of eternity rights itself, we experience full illumination. We experience a great burst of spiritual energy by purification of the heart, which has been called liberation or enlightenment. It is an internal transformation through which we merge with the Supreme Self. Only when the heart is purified can we know the truth. Then we have right thinking and right perception. Part 4. Gnosis in the Tree of Eternity. Roots in the air, branches below. The tree of eternity is unchanging, they say. Its leaves are Vedic hymns, and he who knows it knows the Vedas. Lord Krishna tells us the leaves of the tree of eternity are the Vedic hymns, and he who knows the tree of eternity knows the Vedas. Once we know the tree of life, it means that Brahman now resides within your heart, and you know God in your heart, and you have become the Word. So once awakened, the pure light of Brahman comes into the heart, and Brahman himself will teach you. And this is inner spiritual knowledge perceived through the pure heart that can be called gnosis. And in Christian terms, it is called the Word. Deeper even than this realization of Brahman is the continual knowledge that flows from the tree of life once it is awakened in the heart. Brahman's knowledge is endless, and it continues to develop even after we attain the state of samadhi or union with God. The tree of eternity bears fruit on every branch. The fruit it contains are worlds upon worlds upon worlds. And as we perceive this tree of consciousness, what we begin to see is that the closer we ascend to the light of Brahman, then higher forms of existence emerge. There are worlds beyond this one, resonating at purer levels of spirit or consciousness, where life takes on endless forms in bodies that resist decay, suffering, and death. These bodies are sustained and dictated by the state of the heart. The universe is nothing but life, and your heart is the engine of creation, and it dictates the reality in which you dwell. We are the endless play of God's imagination. We create with Him, and after liberation from a human life, we become that life-sustaining tree, all worlds contained within us, and we go on to sustain new worlds growing upon the branches of eternity. This is what it means to become God, that inevitably we sustain life as well. So we are light itself, dancing and playing across the cosmos, interconnected with every dimension, one with all of the realms therein. We are the ongoing play of the imagination of God, and once this truth is realized, we return to the cosmic womb, merged forever within the great tree of being.